Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can listen to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. Support Everyday Economics and other podcasts just like this one. Click the link in the show description and make your tax-deductible contribution. We're recording this episode on Friday, October 18th, and joining me as always, the great one, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, you had a piece out as part of Zillow Research released, I think it came out on Thursday. We're recording this on Friday. Few things that are interesting in this report, and the headline that you cast on this, just to give people sort of a heads up about what we're going to talk about. Amid affordability crisis, builders continue to pivot toward condos and townhomes. Now, look, when I went back to look at some of the stuff that you've written about the shape and the direction of the housing market, this is very much in line with what you wrote a year ago, as sort of as a almost on a recommendational level, right? And now it's starting to manifest itself as correct. From your piece, like three key points, right? Construction activity fell for the second straight year, but it's ahead of the pre-pandemic pace.
Yes, that's right.
Builders continue to lean into higher density homes, so single family homes
that are attached, right?
Yes,
so condos and townhomes,
right?
As opposed to your standalone single family home with a big backyard.
Yeah, and among the top 50 U.S. markets, the places where you're seeing the most growth in this segment of home building, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Dallas, New York, and Las Vegas. So, I mean, are you an oracle? I mean, what's the...
No, not at all. I mean, there were some hints. I mean, the Survey of Construction, the U.S. Census Bureau Survey of Construction keeps track of this data. So we have access to the data and we can see what's going on. But look, the bottom line is, as affordability got strained, builders had to pivot, right? They had to build smaller, taller. They had to meet buyers where they were at, right? And so the only way to do that is to build more and less land. Land costs have risen tremendously, right? Even building with shared walls. Right. Remember, we went through a pandemic where we had shortages of everything. Right. Yes. And land costs continue to increase at an alarming pace. I joke around all the time, but it's really serious. Like, it's not like we're discovering new land masses. You don't go out and say, oh, I found a new island somewhere, a new continent, or, maybe a new space we can build on. This is what we have, and we have to do with what we already have. And unfortunately, of course, part of the cost of land is building land use regulations, is federal land, right? And so all of this stuff that's restricting the availability of buildable land is going to keep the cost from subsiding. And so, of course, builders have to continue. But what else are builders going to do? I say all the time, builders have to continue to build. And they're doing that. They're doing that to close a 4.5 million housing unit shortage deficit in the United States.
Yes.
Nationwide. They're doing it, but they're doing it. The composition is changing.
I want to ask you a question about that data point. As you and I have produced this show over the last, I think we're in our third year of doing Everyday Economics. Mm-hmm. The number of houses that we are short per, your view, has continued to grow.
That's correct.
So I just for the benefit of our conversation and for the audience, how do you generate that number? What is involved in that? And hold on a second. One more thing.
Go for it.
With the influx of immigrants that have come into the country in the last 3 years, 3+ years, how is that impacting your projection?
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Look, the reality is that we have more family. Let's start with how the number is generated. I'm counting the number of families that are what I call doubling up, right? So imagine families that are not related, that are forced to share the same housing unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Non-related families, non-related individuals forced to share the same housing unit,
Right.
right? If you count the number of those families, by the way, it's a reasonable assumption to say that you would probably prefer to live on your own and not with people that are not related to you.
I think that's
And
fair to say.
right. And so if you count the number of these people, of these families, and you take that and you compare it to the number of units that were available for rent or for sale in any given year,
Mm-hmm.
you come up with a 4.5 million gap.
Wow.
In other words, you have 4.5 million more of those families that would probably prefer to live on their own than you have homes that are available for rent or for sale. And so we need to close that gap. In other words, I say this all the time, even if we gave every person, every family enough money to go out and live on their own, there wouldn't be enough units available for all of them. We'd come up 4.5 million units short. And so that's a big problem, right? That we need to fix as a country.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the problem for the affordability crisis we're facing. And then you have this question about immigration, right? And I think that's a very important question, very fair question. It's interesting you point this out, because this very morning I was talking to, on LinkedIn, I was talking to a friend from another organization that has put out a comment saying, look, the fact that immigration is set to slow is likely going to impact housing supply negatively,
Okay.
because 1 in 5 construction workers are first generation immigrants
Mm-hmm.
from these 11 high encounter countries, which are Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Peru. Imagine all these people that we're trying to keep south of the border, right? 1 in 5 of those guys come in here, right? 1 in 5 construction workers are from those countries, are these people that come in here and they build our housing so that we can have more affordable housing, essentially, right? Very important. I think that's a very important point that's overlooked. And of course, you could argue, right? And you could argue that, yeah, but those people also need housing.
Well, of course.
Right? And the research shows that those people put pressure on the rental demand side, right? So they come in and they tend to be renters. And so
Yes.
they'll put pressure on the rental demand side of housing, while at the same time helping to subside the pressure, to relieve the pressure
Right.
by building housing, right? So the net impact is going to be very important here,
I
right?
think,
And
but I think
right,
inherent to that, and I mean, obviously, we're a nation of immigrants, right?
totally,
My
totally.
the two sides of my family, they came in. One came in about 175 years ago, and the other one came in about 125 years ago, right? So,
That's right.
and we're European descent. Um, but in this moment, right? I mean, I think the bigger issue that's on the minds of Americans, as it pertains to the cost of rent related to immigration, the current state of immigration, is the subsidization of rental and what that's costing existing Americans in terms of having a home or being able to house themselves.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's rent growth has slowed, right, tremendously in the past couple of years, right? Despite the high numbers of immigrants, right? Rents are growing at a slower pace. They're growing now at a slower pace than wages. And so you've
Right.
seen that kind of reversal. And then you've had to coincide, not coinciding, but the reason rent growth is slowed is the big increase in multifamily construction. We have the most multifamily construction in almost 50 years, since 1973, in 51 years, right? Like, it is absolutely unbelievable how much multifamily construction has taken place in the past few years, right? The most number of homes being completed or under construction, right? Apartment buildings being completed or under construction today since 1973. So yeah, if we want to argue whether immigration has been more beneficial or not, then at least at a high level, the data points to more a net positive impact because of the the fact that it alleviates labor shortages in the construction sector, that we're able to build more construction, both on the for sale side but also the rental side, and so of course that has helped bring rent growth lower and inflation lower, and so I'm pleased. Now, of course, immigration is set to subside, to decrease in the coming years, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, but also I think Congressional Budget Office estimates.
Well,
And
the policies have changed. I mean,
and the policies are changing for sure.
So this is a subject worthy of much greater discussion. I didn't mean to open up a can of worms toward the end of one of our segments. Let's come back and talk about this in full scope at some point soon. Appreciate your thoughts as always. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics at americastalking.com.